Entrepreneurship, I don't know if people ever have like a light bulb moment or anything like that. That's not the way that it's ever worked for me. It all kind of came to a head between 2013, 14, 15, where the seeds were planted, and then seeing a lot of civil unrest from like the killings of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and Philando Castile and a lot of these things that were happening.
From Two Comma Media, it's Give 'em the Business, a show about Black entrepreneurs and business leaders sharing their stories of adversity and success. I'm Troy Evans, and on today's show, my guest is Damola Ogundipe, co-founder and CEO of Plural. What does it take to turn complex public data into powerful, actionable insights that actually drive change? Just ask Damola Ogundipe, the visionary CEO and co-founder of Plural. Damola's journey started with a simple but profound belief that transparency can empower communities, drive better decisions, and hold institutions accountable. With Plural, he's built a platform that makes public data not just accessible, but meaningful, bridging the gap between government, technology, and the people they serve. Damola's journey to becoming a data disruptor began across the Atlantic, rooted in a pivotal decision by his father to pursue greater opportunities for his family. That bold move not only changed Damola's environment, but completely reshaped the trajectory of his life and the impact he was destined to make.
So I was born in Nigeria. My dad immigrated when I was young and then sent for us when I was 5. So it was a couple of years where I didn't see my dad. He was, figuring things out in Minnesota of all places. I have an uncle, my dad's older brother, that lives in Minnesota. I went to school, I went to college, and ended up immigrating. So that's the reason why we ended up in Minnesota, kind of following him. So left just to kind of like build a better future, right? Just give us an opportunity to try to, get this American dream.
So wanted to leave to give his family the opportunity at the American dream, which today might be in reverse, but, we'll see how that plays out over the next several years.
We're going to find out.
Right.
I think there's a lot to say about whether or not that American dream is still attainable. Yeah.
Right. But how much do you remember about being in Nigeria when you were little, and then how often do you go back?
The funny thing about memory is like your senses are what triggers your memories. So for me, like I remember smells when I was a kid. Like I remember how my grandma, my mom's side, my mom's mother, how she smelled. Little smells like that, cooking, food, that type of thing will trigger a memory for me, or it brings me back to being maybe a small kid in Nigeria. But other than that, I don't have like a lot of childhood memories from Nigeria, just those types of memories that are triggered from smell. I also remember some traumatic stuff. I have this like scar right here, top left hand, my forehead. And that was from like playing around and running into a railing and gashing my head open. So stuff like that I remember, right? Like those kind of big things. But I go back to Nigeria every year. Ever since I became an adult and could pay for myself to go home. So since like 2013, I've been going back to Nigeria every year. So it's home. It feels like home. So I have a lot of family there. My immediate family is all in the United States, but cousins, aunts, uncles, nephews, nieces, extended family, they're all still in Nigeria. So I try to go home a lot.
Yeah, I've yet to go. I've been to Ghana and a couple other countries there, but I actually organized a delegation that the first year we went to Ghana. And then I left the company, and the second year they went to Nigeria, and I was like, why y'all go after I leave? So, but I hope to get there soon. So when you find yourself in Minnesota, interesting place to land, immigrating from Africa, but what do you remember about growing up in Minnesota, and, how did you fit in? What inclinations did you have that you would one day become an entrepreneur? Or was that something that you didn't discover until later?
Yeah, similar to like having kind of patchwork memories from when I was in Nigeria, the first like big memory that I have once I got to the U.S. and to Minnesota was two things. One will be obvious, the other one is a little funny, but one, snow, right? So I remember like, man, like what is this? The cold, the snow, all that stuff. I remember that distinctly. And then two was my first McDonald's Happy Meal. I distinctly remember getting that little Happy Meal box and opening it up, and there was a toy, and the burger was so good. Maybe all the bad stuff we put into some of the food that we eat in the U.S., but like I distinctly remember those two things, snow and my first Happy Meal. Well, growing up in Minnesota, especially after first moving from Nigeria, where all you see are Black people, right? Africans, Black people. Even as like a 5, 6, 7-year-old, those things were still, it was still very like jarring, right? And like a big cultural shock, even as a kid. I remember when we first moved to Minnesota, we moved to Minneapolis, which is a lot more diverse than like the more like sprawled out urban areas or suburban areas of the Twin Cities. But even still at that point, there were a lot of white people in my class, a lot of Asian people in my class, ethnicities and races I'd never seen before, and trying to like even communicate with them with a really thick Nigerian accent at the time. Like people talk to me now like, oh, you're from Nigeria? And I'm like, yeah, but I can turn my accent on and off. So it was like just kind of like very jarring and difficult to navigate as an immigrant. And I think a lot of immigrants have that story. And when you first get here as a child or as an adult, those cultural exchanges are tough to navigate. And you just get thrown into a school setting, no parents around. You're just immediately in school and surrounded by all these new things. It could be difficult and challenging. And as I got older, my family ended up moving into the suburbs and my community and everything around me got wider and wider. And I think that there's some trade-offs to that, right? Like you, as a Black person growing up in like a predominantly white environment like Minnesota, one of the challenges is figuring out like what your identity is. Like what does it mean to be Black in this setting? What does it mean to be a Black American and Nigerian American, right? All these different identities that you're trying to like kind of figure out and sort through. And that really didn't start showing up in a real way for me until late middle school, early high school, where I was having like some of these identity crises. And I don't know if that would have been the case if we would have immigrated to a city like Atlanta, where it's very kind of culturally diverse, a lot of people that look like us, right? One of the things that I think for me, I did to kind of navigate those spaces was spend a lot of time with myself inwardly and then like tap into the things that I really enjoyed. And I'm a bit of an extrovert. So my extrovertness showed up in sports, playing basketball, football, running track, etc. But my social environment wasn't an extroverted social environment. So I spent a lot of time with myself outside of sports, thinking about things, whether it was spending time with my parents and talking about politics, and I'm sure that'll show up later in our conversation, or talking about entrepreneurship or business or watching the news with them, so on and so forth. I've spent a lot of time inwardly and then with my immediate family that were primarily adults. So I think that kind of gave me a different approach to being a kid where I wanted to do more like professional adult things, like a business, like make money, so on and so forth. So that started showing up for me in a real way by the time I got to high school. So I've always been an entrepreneur. I started my first business in high school because of all the reasons that I laid out, right? Really just kind of thinking more internally and introspectively. But then when I wanted to spend time with my family, it was in these kind of more professional adult settings.
And what was that first business that you started?
Well, actually, my first business was in middle school. I think a lot of people can relate to this. Just like a local lawn care service. But there's a twist to it for me because I got in a lot of trouble for this. So I started a local lawn care service out maybe 6th or 7th grade. And for people that remember, it wasn't easy just to like put a website up or anything like that. So if you wanted to advertise your business, the best way to advertise it was guerrilla marketing. So I got my parents to print me out my lawn care service with the little pull tabs. So you go to all the grocery stores and they have bulletins, or you could nail it on there. People could pull and, call your phone number. So, I built like a small little business, like, raking leaves, shoveling snow, just around like 10 blocks around my neighborhood. And I remember one day, another neighborhood kid, maybe like 2 or 3 or 4 blocks down, like a year or two younger than me, came over and knocked on my parents' house and asked to rake our leaves. And I opened the door. I was a kid, so maybe my parents were like, oh, go open the door, it might be your friend. So I opened the door. He tells me, hey, I'm raking leaves, $15. And I was charging 20, or maybe I was charging 15, he was charging 10. There was some discrepancy in what I was charging and what he was charging. So I was like, well, I don't need you to rake my house's leaves, but can you rake Miss Beverly? She was down the street, like 2 houses down. Could you rake her leaves? I was scheduled to rake them later that day. And I was like, I'll pay you the $15 or whatever it was. So he went, raked the leaves. I paid him the money. And then I went to Miss Beverly later that day and collected my $20 and I made $5 without doing anything. And I said, oh, this is capitalism. I didn't think of it that way, but I was like, this is amazing. And I did that with this kid for probably like a month. And then I think his parents found out, contacted my parents, and that was the end of it. But taught me a valuable lesson about labor dynamics, capitalism, costs, so on and so forth. But I think that was the first official business, like exchange of dollars for a service or for labor that I engaged with.
Man, you was making power moves in middle school.
That's not the way they looked at it. They were like, you taking advantage of a younger kid. It's not cool. Like, that's how the adults looked at it at the time.
Yeah, I know that's how they looked at it, but there was some labor dynamic power moves going on. So I'm not mad at you. And so you said you played sports when you were in high school as well. What did you learn from playing sports that you found has helped you out in your entrepreneurial endeavors?
For me, sports played a vital role. I played sports in high school. I played sports all through growing up, high school, and in college at the University of Minnesota. So sports for me was like an intricate part of who I am today. I still consider myself an athlete, even though I don't, compete for money, just for fun and for pride. But sports taught me leadership. Sports taught me discipline. Sports taught me grit, consistency, working with others, teamwork. I mean, everything that sports taught me, I applied to business and to entrepreneurship right now. When I look around at other entrepreneurs that I've gotten really close with, they all have some sort of athletic background, whether it was playing, high school varsity sports or even playing, professionally. There's just a certain level of discipline that's instilled, consistency that's instilled, that is necessary to be an effective entrepreneur. And you can get that in other places. But for me, I found that through sports.
And what sport did you play when you got to college?
In college, I played football and ran track.
Oh, on scholarship?
So I walked on to the football team and then earned a scholarship after 2 years and was on scholarship for the last 3 years I was there, which was a tough thing to do. There were other places I could have played on scholarship that were slightly smaller schools, D1 AA schools, D2 schools, as they were called at the time, but I really wanted to play Big Ten football. I'm fortunate enough to earn a scholarship after a couple of years.
What position?
Running back.
I'm from Ohio, so I'm an Ohio State fan. So, give you a little bit of pass on the Big Ten.
There's no rivalry between Ohio State and Minnesota. Y'all kick our asses every single year, so it doesn't really. There's no hard feelings.
I'm trying to actually be better about not caring as much about the outcome of university programs or professional programs. I'm from Cleveland, so unfortunately I'm a Browns fan and whatnot, but I'm trying to be less connected to the outcome since I don't get any of the accolades when they win the championship or any of the money, and I want to focus on what is going to make an impact in my community or my world. But it's hard when you got roots in a particular place and you grew up rooting for an institution all your life.
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic to be emotionally invested in something that you have absolutely no control over.
Right.
I don't know why we allow ourselves to, as human beings across every race, ethnicity, geography, there is no boundary to it. I am incredibly emotionally invested in the Minnesota Vikings, and I don't want to be. I don't want my mood and my day and my week to be impacted because of something I cannot have zero control over. So I definitely feel you on that. I'm trying to get out of that too.
We have to learn as entrepreneurs how to tap into that special sauce that they have and apply it to our own business models so that we can have the same customer engagement as fans do, right?
Yeah.
So you had a good career at Minnesota, and what did you study while you were there?
My major was in finance, and then I had a minor in entrepreneurship and sociology.
That's a nice combination of minors and majors, especially for an entrepreneur. I tell people often to engage in finance, especially because that's going to help you raise the capital that we so struggle to build in the Black community. And I know when I was younger, I was a bit afraid of the numbers to some degree. And it wasn't until grad school that I started to embrace finance and really understand that this is how you bring capital to bear and grow and scale companies and opportunities. Were you able to leverage what you learned when coming out and thinking about starting Plural?
I think so. Not maybe in a direct way. I think probably the big lessons studying finance, in college was that you think about the numbers as inputs as opposed to just money, right? It's a resource, it's a tool, it's capital to be able to do X, Y, and Z. So I think, even when going out into the markets to raise for Plural, it was always what is the capital being used for? What am I raising this money to actually accomplish? Not just, raising money because I need it, right? Or because it's something that people do when they're starting a company. It's an input, right? It's a resource input. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that when I think about my experience at the University of Minnesota studying from an academic perspective, that I'm all right, that was probably something that helped me. But when it comes to the actual work itself, it's interesting. I think maybe the work that I did for my minors, right, in sociology, maybe a little bit in entrepreneurship, helped me more when it came to starting the company outside of what I mentioned around the looking at numbers as inputs or the dollars as numbers and inputs. And the reason for that is when it comes to running a company and building a business, especially if you have to go out and raise capital, a lot of it comes down to how effective of a communicator are you? How well do you understand people? Can you get people to believe in what you're building and the vision that you have? A lot of it has to do with more like human to human relationships, that it has to do with, do I understand the math? Do I understand the financial aspects behind this, right? All of those things. Obviously, it's important to have both. But when I look at like what has helped us get to this point relative to my academic background, I think it's more to do with what I learned about human to human interaction and what motivates people, even the incentive structures that we put in place, like humans are driven by incentives. Those things had less to do with a degree in finance and more to do with experience in sociology.
That makes perfect sense to me, and I concur with applying those tactics to the capital markets and whatnot. When you left Minnesota, what was next for you?
The plan, it was a two-step plan. I was going to go work on Wall Street, so degree in finance, go work at Wall Street, and then I was going to go to law school. That was the plan. I'm a planner, right? Like, I'm a goal setter and a planner. I'm going to walk on, get my scholarship, walk down, get my scholarship, do this, you know what I mean? Like, get my degree in finance. So I'm a goal setter and a planner. I kind of like to stick, for the most part, to my plans. So that was the plan. Wall Street, be an investment banker, make a bunch of money doing that, stack it up, go to law school afterwards, do something with my legal degree, whether that was going back into sports and being a sports agent or being an immigration lawyer. There was the kind of things that I wanted to do that I thought a legal degree would help me kind of parse out what I wanted to do and make that decision, that career decision long term. Maybe go back into finance. I don't know, but that was the plan. But in 2008, 2009, I graduated in 2011, but 2008, 2009, financial crisis. It was really tough to get investment banking positions, especially being in Minnesota, trying to get a job in New York. And when I started really looking for jobs, which was 2010 going into 2011 academic year, the job market was kind of tough. And I ended up going into management consulting. I got recruited to work at a management consulting firm that was staffing out of Los Angeles. So I was like, all right, you know what? Good salary, honestly, great salary coming out of undergrad. Decided to take that job. And that was kind of the beginning of Plural, to be honest. I started doing a lot of work related to regulatory change management in the healthcare space and kind of getting exposure to like how public policy works within an enterprise setting or corporate setting. And still was thinking about law school, but instead of going investment banking into law school, now I was like thinking management consulting into law school and was still sticking to that plan. I was doing some entrepreneurship things too. I could talk about that when I was in LA, but decided to start applying to law school in 2015, 2016. Got accepted into a few schools, decided to kind of like delay a little bit, reapplied in 2017 or 2018 timeframe. Got accepted into a few schools again, decided to go to Columbia, accepted my acceptance into Columbia. But I just started really pushing Plural at that point and ended up not going to Columbia. But to kind of going back to answering your question, it was management consultant for me that was my first kind of professional step out of college.
And I know that management consultant can be a good starting place for entrepreneurs. Tell me about why you think it's perfect.
When it comes to entrepreneurship, I think there's three things you have to do really well in order to make it, period, right? And let me say entrepreneurship as I know it within a venture-backed kind of tech-forward space, right? Entrepreneurship can look like a lot of different things, but just kind of talking about my experience with entrepreneurship right now, you have to be able to be a good communicator, right? You have to be a good communicator. You have to be able to translate what you're working on, for example, to why it solves the problems for a customer, for a client. So you got to be an excellent communicator. You have to be an excellent salesperson, right? Communication and sales go hand in hand, but you have to be able to sell. And it's not just selling a product, right? It's selling yourself, right? As a steward of capital, and why you would be a good steward of capital if you're raising venture capital. It's selling the vision to your employees. It's selling the opportunity and the product to your customers, so on and so forth. If you can't sell as an entrepreneur, you're most likely not going to do well. And then the third thing is you have to have so much agency and autonomy and belief in yourself. You got to be able to do a lot of different things well, because you're going to be on an island a lot of times, right? Where in order for you to get started, you have to be able to write. You have to be able to create that pitch deck. You have to be able to figure out maybe like, can I code a little bit to develop this thing? So a lot of agency and autonomy and like in yourself, and it kind of being a jack of a lot of different trades, right? And I think that management consulting kind of is a great learning area, learning ground, building ground for those skills, right? Where you coming in as a consultant and you have to quickly on your feet when you're at a client site or a new client site, understand what problems they're trying to solve, communicate effectively. You have to help sell work. as a consultant, sell yourself to say that you're capable of doing this job or doing this work or doing this assignment or this project. And you're thrusted into a position where you have to figure it out on your own a lot of times, right? You've got to use your resources. They're typically challenging you and pushing you to do things that are a little bit out of your zone of comfort. So you figure out how to be kind of a jack of a lot of different things. So I think it's a great breeding ground for entrepreneurship as management consultant. Now, you stay as a management consultant for too long, you get a little too comfortable. That presents problems as an entrepreneur. So I think there's also kind of like a Goldilocks zone of like how much time should you be a management consultant before you take that big step of saying, hey, I'm going to go launch my own venture.
Yeah, they say good is the enemy of great, right? So you start getting comfortable making nice paychecks and things of that nature, and then you're not willing necessarily to step back and take the risk that is associated with entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And you said you dabbled in a few other entrepreneurial ventures while you were in LA. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, the thing about LA is the kind of professional gravity or the gravity that is the industry there is Hollywood, it's entertainment. So even though I was there working as a management consultant, the gravitational pull of the entertainment industry is ever present. So I ended up collaborating and partnering with a few folks, and we built some music production studios out of shipping containers that a lot of like really interesting artists came through and made some music in those studios. This is 2014, 15, 16, 17. So before kind of shipping containers and ADUs, right, made out of shipping containers, alternative dwelling units made out of shipping containers was like mainstream. Me and my partners had seen some YouTube videos of like how you could just buy shipping containers, and we thought, hey, you could refab them and acoustically treat them, and now you've got a portable, music studio, right? So when we did that with 2 containers and made a lot of great music out of those containers. Not me, I'm not musically inclined. I like music, but I can't produce or make music, can't sing, ask my wife. But that was a fun experiment, a fun situation, and a decent business.
So why did you not continue down that path?
Like I said, it was a decent business, right? Not a kind of business that scales or has the type of reach that technology or a tech-driven business has. And it wasn't really my passion, right? It was something that was interesting to do in a fun environment, but it wasn't anything that I was passionate about. So I knew there was an expiration to that, and the expiration came.
And so you said while at managing consulting, you also started to get the seeds of Plural planted. What was the problem that you were noticing that you thought Plural could solve?
As I mentioned earlier, like I've always been an entrepreneur, something I didn't bring up, like even in college, started a sneaker retail company, right? Would buy sneakers wholesale, had a couple retail partners, and became an eBay power seller with one of my best friends. So for me, since 5th, 6th as I can remember, I had started a business, right? I was starting and doing something and was in an industry. So while I was consulting, I even starting, the music production studio company with the shipping containers, I knew that wasn't what I really wanted to do. And I was kind of in a place, in my early mid-20s where I wanted to do something that entrepreneurially that I was passionate about. And I wanted to do something that was in tech and could scale. And the reason for the tech and could scale piece was I'm in LA, obviously just the same state as Silicon Valley. There's a lot of still that influence there in LA. So you start seeing and hearing about, different people that are raising venture capital and building big businesses and doing things in tech. It just kind of seeps in a little bit. So I was like, I want to do something like that, right? I want to build a business in tech. I want to solve an important problem. I want to do something that I'm passionate about. I already love technology. Obviously, with the shipping container thing was kind of a tech project, right? Even though it was like primarily a lot of like kind of physical hardware. So there was a lot of things that I was interested in, and it all kind of came to a head between 2013, 14, 15, where the seeds were planted in 2 ways. One, doing regulatory change management work, and then seeing a lot of civil unrest from like the killings of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and Philando Castile and a lot of these things that were happening. And entrepreneurship, I don't know if people ever have like a light bulb moment or anything like that. That's not the way that it's ever worked for me. It's usually been kind of like a rolling effect of like, man, I wish that we could have something that made it easier for us to understand like what our legislators are doing, right? So we can make better decisions on, as a Black community, a more broader community, around like the policies that impact us. And then how do you build from that, man? Like policies are really hard to understand. And then I read a white paper about natural language processing and how you could use NLP to be able to synthesize news articles. And oh man, I wonder if you could, I'm reading, a regulatory rule change in California. I'm like, I wonder if I could use NLP to synthesize this regulatory rule, right? Like, so there's this kind of cascading effect of thoughts and ideas around like, hey, this is the thing that I'm interested in. I want to solve a problem, so on and so forth. What's happening in my community? What do I care about? This thing is like really keeping me up at night, the problems that I'm seeing happen, so on and so forth. And that's what kind of led to starting Plural, this combination of everything that was happening internally, everything that was happening externally that I was then processing and also internalizing. And then my outlet for all of that was I want to use tech and entrepreneurship to solve this thing that I care a lot about, which is how do you understand public policy better?
It's interesting because I had a similar thought around, and still do, around a lot of the civil unrest that took place with Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, Ahmaud Arbery, et cetera. And my thought, which was yours, was how do we keep track of laws that are happening around the country? Mm. One of my thoughts was how do we map candidates to their actual votes? And does their votes align with our best interests, right? Because people say things all the time on the campaign trail, but what actually happens when they get in office, and have they followed through, or should they be voted out, right? But I was thinking something similar. I didn't act on it, but it's interesting, and the best entrepreneurial, if not all entrepreneurial ideas, come from a problem that is passionate to you as an entrepreneur that you want to solve, because other people are probably experiencing that same thing. So you've got this catalyst now for you to start Plural. It fits into the buckets of technology and something that can scale. When did you decide that, or how did you decide to actually make the leap? Did you work for a little while and do both at the same time? Did you go cold turkey? What was kind of like your motivation for saying it's time to make the move?
Yeah, I kept working for the most part. So with consulting, you could sometimes sit on the bench, right? You have a little bit more free time, but I kept working. It wasn't until 2020 that I was like, all right, this is what I'm doing full time. And like stopped everything else that I was doing to make money and took, obviously a big pay cut, right? And just try to figure things out. But you didn't ask this specific question, but something that I do think is important is, especially in this modern age, I don't recommend, and I don't think it's necessary I have an idea, I want to be an entrepreneur, so I'm going to stop everything else that I'm doing and focus on this thing. At that specific point in time, you should have the discernment as an entrepreneur to know when the time is right. That's part of what goes into being a successful entrepreneur. There's no like steadfast rule of like, this is when you should quit your full-time job that pays for you and your family's well-being, but you should know. And it usually will not be, and probably should not be, when it's a one-to-one paycheck. You make $100K doing your full-time job. Now I can make $100K running this thing. So now I'm going to quit my full-time job. It should not be the case, right? But there will be a point in time with internal discernment to know, hey, it's time. I think I can make this something, whatever you were looking for, whatever you needed validation that this could work. And then now you need to put all your energy into it. You should have the discernment as an entrepreneur. So that discernment came from me of like, all right, it's time. It was actually 2018 when I was like, all right, now it's time for me to like put all of my all into this and cut all of the distractions. Happened to align with when I left LA and stopped doing the business for the shipping containers. I need to take everything else as a distraction. And this is now my focus because I've got something here that I'm passionate about. I want to see it through. And I had, that sense of discernment at that point.
After the break, Damola has decided it's time to focus on Plural full time. What will this new level of dedication lead to? I'm Troy Evans, and you're listening to Give 'em the Business. Give 'em the Business is sponsored by Oasis Vacations. Are you tired of vacation rentals that don't live up to the photos? We get it. That's why Vacation with Oasis is changing the game, offering luxury vacation homes in the world's most stunning destinations. No more surprises, no more letdowns. Just high-end, beautifully curated stays designed for comfort and unforgettable experiences. Whether it's Dubai, Costa Rica, Hawaii or beyond, Oasis delivers next-level hospitality, premium amenities, and a seamless booking experience. Visit vacationwithoasis.com and upgrade your next getaway. We're talking with Damola Ogundipe, co-founder of Plural. After deciding to focus on Plural full-time, Damola was ready to scale the business. Now all he needed was to raise capital.
So I've been trying to get some investor interest in the idea, right? Hadn't really built anything solid, but had the idea and was trying to raise some capital 2016, 17, and was completely unsuccessful. And in late 2017, early 2018, I just scrapped that idea that I was working on and was like, all right, I have something, I think I have a better idea in the same universe, right? In the same area around how can you understand public policy better, but from the lens of lobbyists and policy professionals, right? And in mid 2018, I was in a pitch competition and we had no product at all. I just basically said this is what I want to do now. It's a little bit different, but it's what I want to do now. But I hadn't actually started tinkering with the new product or anything like that. But I had a prototype, just a sketch, a design sketch, but not an actual functional prototype. And I always give this person, I love her forever for this, but I pitched it in front of Arlen Hamilton, who's at this point, I think she's pretty well known and well recognized as an investor. And she was like, I'll invest in you. I like this idea a lot. I'll invest in you. So you could write me in for $25,000. Once you start raising around and all that stuff, you could write me in for $25,000. So she gave us a commitment, right, at that point. And I was like, that was some validation, not complete validation, but some validation. So I was like, all right, I'm going to keep tinkering and building this thing before going and actually trying to raise real money. And got it to a point where we had V1 of our legislative tracking product. And during this time, I'd been working with a lot of nonprofit advocacy groups because they were the ones that were kind of letting me know, hey, this is something that would be really helpful. If you have something like this would save us a bunch of time. We'd be able to do more work in the community. We'd be able to understand legislation better, so on and so forth. So tinkering in partnership almost with customers that I was then turning back around once we had V1 and selling the software to. So they were essentially giving us the answers to the test of what they would buy. It goes back to communication, salesmanship, all that stuff, right? So they were, I'm working with them and they're saying, hey, this would be really helpful. I'll go back, build it. Is this correct? How much would you pay for it? And then actually charging them once we had a version that was functional. And then people heard about it, more customers, and then was able to go out to the capital markets and say, hey, we've got a commitment from Arlen Hamilton, for example. We're going out, we're raising a pre-seed round. We have some customers that are paying us money. This is what the product looks like. And then that's where the momentum started to come in.
And so how much did you ultimately end up raising in, I would say, first phase of the process?
So we've had 3 fundraising rounds, essentially a pre-seed round, a seed round, and a Series A. So our pre-seed round, we raised $500,000. Our seed round, we raised 1.5. And then our Series A, we raised $10 million.
And so what was the criteria or use of funds at each stage? So at each stage, you needed a different amount to do what?
So for the pre-seed round, we had a V1 of our product. We had some customers, small, maybe paying us in aggregate $1,000 a month, maybe $700-800 a month. So we had some traction, right? A demonstratable product, some traction, some customers. So we really needed the money because the product just wasn't at a point where we could go to customers that we didn't have a relationship with, right? Where it wouldn't be buggy. We just kind of had a very functional V1, right, of the product. So we were able to go and say, hey, we can demonstrate that there's a market for this. And we want to build this product out more. We needed more data. We needed more features, so on and so forth. So we could take this to a broader swath of the market. But here is a small, little pool of customers that we've already closed to demonstrate that we could go out and try to get a larger pool of customers. So that was the pre-seed round. Was a lot of hey, we need to build more stuff into this product in order to sell more. Our seed round, that was hey, we've built more stuff, but we need to go get more customers. We're not ready to scale this yet, but we want to go get more customers. And that requires still some product iteration, some more data, a slightly bigger team, right? We have all these other customers. We have 10 or 15 customers now. We want to get to 30 or something like that. So we need more infrastructure, that type of thing. And then the Series A was more, hey, we've got product market fit, and we're trying to figure out how we can increase our distribution and get as many customers as possible.
So walk through for the listener exactly what Plural is when you're selling it to someone, and what problems it solves for customers.
Yeah, so it's evolved. So now we're an AI analyst for legislation and regulatory change management. So what that means is we have the largest database of public policy information in the world. That's not hyperbole. We have legislative and regulatory data structured in our database going back into the 1990s. But legislative and regulatory data, like policy information, is constantly changing. There's always new bills, new executive orders, new regulatory rules across not just the federal government, but the state and local government. And what happens is that people that do policy work professionally, so we know them as oftentimes lobbyists, but also policy researchers, nonprofit advocacy groups, so the League of Women Voters, the NAACPs, the Common Causes, right, that do work on behalf, policy work on behalf of communities and initiatives. They need really great software and analysis tools so they can know, like, hey, this piece of legislation popped up in Oklahoma that has an impact on public libraries and books that are in schools, right? And they have the great analyses tools like ours to be able to help them parse through that information and then subsequently take action. So we try to be the software infrastructure and AI infrastructure for them to know what's happening with public policy changes, to analyze what's happening with public policy changes, and to be able to take action and lobby or advocate more effectively and efficiently.
I can see numerous use case scenarios for that product. I've worked in both for-profit and nonprofit organizations throughout my career. And at the nonprofit level, all of my organizations were national organizations. And as you mentioned, legislation is happening differently at states at different paces. And if you have a national organization, you need to be kept abreast of how that's going to affect your workforce or your service that you're providing or what have you. I've worked in the casino industry, which is going to be different in every state and what's allowed versus not allowed. And it's almost like the inefficiency and bureaucracy of government is what allows your product to thrive, right?
There's a lot of truth in that. The more chaotic our policy environment is, the more necessary our products are for the market. It's an unfortunate, situation, but we try to bring order in the midst of chaos, essentially, right? Like all these different jurisdictions are introducing things that there's a whiplash effect, right? It's a bit chaotic. The way that the U.S. would want to work, how we would want to work here in America, is a good balance of federal policies that kind of trump the state level policies and a good healthy mix of state level policies where the federal government says, hey, we want the states to make these decisions. And right now that partnership isn't there between the federal government and state governments, where they're figuring out like what should be in the more congressional in decision making and policy making and what should be kind of left for the states. It feels more combative in a lot of ways. And that combativeness creates, a lot of policy-oriented chaos. And we're here to help bring some order to that and some better understanding of those policies. But I mean, you're 100% right. Like it does end up helping sometimes, providing a tailwind for our business.
And you've been able to land some pretty big corporations as customers. What are some of your bigger clients?
The name brand ones that people know: Comcast, NBC, Google, X, formerly Twitter, Affirm, the fintech company. Those are kind of some like the big corporate customers. And even some of our nonprofit customers are, I would say, name brand, Common Cause, Next Gen America, Local Support Solution Center, like a lot of big organizations as well, a lot of big nonprofits as well.
And with those organizations, what is the business model? Is it subscription-based, where they are basically paying a monthly fee for this constant monitoring and alerts for what might affect them in any particular state and what have you?
Yeah, exactly right. So software subscription, yearly subscription usually, that will make some concessions depending on the situation, but yearly subscription. We don't do like seat-based pricing. So we have a differentiated pricing model from like when we first started. We've never believed in kind of seat-based pricing. So when an organization subscribes, so it's a flat fee, they get onboarding, they get the software, they get all the data that they need, so on and so forth. And it's predictable for them, right? And for us, we don't have to worry about kind of like that Netflix effect of people sharing login IDs that kind of comes with a seat-based model, that type of thing. But yeah, very standard yearly subscription model for our customers.
Do you have to change the pricing model based on how many states they want to monitor and things of that nature?
Yeah, so we have a few like kind of pricing levers. One of them is, like you called out, how many jurisdictions do you need access to, right? Do you want that data flow? It's software, the data's coming in, there's a bunch of workflow tools in it. Which jurisdictional data do you need? And then we can kind of lever pricing based off of that. And this fulfills our kind of public benefit, social impact work too, right? Because if you're one of our enterprise corporate customers, you need everything, right? You need federal, state, you need some localities, you need regulations, right? You need all this stuff. And that's a huge price point that they're willing to pay because it's for work, right? It's for their business efforts. If we didn't have a pricing model that allowed that kind of like levering and flexibility where, a small local nonprofit that only is really doing work in the state of Georgia doesn't care about what, not that they don't care, but isn't doing any sort of advocacy work in, the other 49 states and all these other territories, et cetera. We want to be able to have a price point for them that works, that still gives them an excellent product, an excellent tool for the advocacy work that they're doing and the policy analysis work that they're doing. So that variance in, or that variability that we can, or levering that we can put in a place for jurisdictional access into their software instance allows us to price in an affordable way for those smaller organizations.
And you started launching this in the mid 2010s, 2015, 2016, like you said. But in the past few years, AI has exploded in capability, popularity. We have consumer versions of it now. How has the rapidly evolving technology around AI affected your business model? And where do you find yourself having to constantly be evolving as well?
Yeah, so in two ways, right? One is externally, like how we build the product for our customers and what we're building for our customers. And then the second way is our internal operations, right? How are we leveraging AI to make ourselves more operationally efficient, to reduce costs, that type of thing. So for our customers, we love it. We love the fact that we have better technology to be able to put into our technology to solve more and more problems for our customers, right? And give them better and better product experiences. So we recently launched 2 new product experiences that are both AI native. And it's because we can leverage these foundational models in a way where for our data set, we have this huge corpus of public policy data, of textual data. So there's so much that large language models can do for us to be able to parse and understand that data in a way that reflects for our customers. So it's been amazing. And we started off as an AI company, right? Not an AI research company, but a company that was building software that is AI powered. We launched our first set of AI features in 2020. We have a feature called Global Bill Search, where you can take one artifact, legislation, and use that as the search artifact to find other pieces of legislation and other artifacts that are similar in terms of intent. And that was driven through natural language processing. We launched that in 2020. So we've always had AI kind of infused. It was one of the things I mentioned, natural language processing, that white papers I was reading in the mid-teens, right? Those are the things that I was really interested in applying to public policy information. So for us externally, it's been great. Like we love it. And we've been on the bleeding edge of applying AI into our product, into this data set. Internally, operationally, it can be a little disorienting of like how many, the influx of AI tools to help you with operations and with your kind of internal work in a tech company. And we try everything. I'll put out a mandate to my team, whatever you want to try, AI software, whatever you want to try it, give it a shot, right? We'll sign up for a free trial, pay for a month, whatever the case may be, try it. Like finding ways to be operationally efficient is a priority. And to be honest, the capital markets are rewarding efficiency right now. Before, the capital markets primarily rewarded growth. Now they're rewarding a combination of growth and efficiency. You're hearing in the public markets, in particular, the publicly traded companies, you're hearing more and more stories about revenue per FTE and like hearing crazy stories of $10 million per FTE at some public companies because that they've infused AI into their operations. So we think about that a lot. Like how can we be more operationally efficient? What does just not right now look like, but 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18 months from now, how can we get ahead of it? What do we think sales is going to look like in 6, 12 months? What do we think marketing is going to look like in 6, 12 months? What do we think back office technology is going to look like in 6, 12 months? Do we still need a bookkeeping firm? Can we use AI to do our bookkeeping? So we take AI for operational efficiency internally very, very seriously. And then, like I said, the other side of the coin is like making sure that's the case for our product, right? That our customers are getting more efficient with our product by investing and infusing AI into it.
And so in terms of operational efficiency, how large is your team now?
21 people.
And they are dispersed throughout the US or globally, or how is that?
Yeah, so globally at peak, we were at 40 people. And going back to the operational efficiency piece, our investors, I think all capital market investors right now, get trim and be more efficient. So we reduced our headcount by half and we've grown faster. And part of it is global workforce, fully remote workforce, having engineers that are off, a couple engineers, not our entire engineering workforce, but a few engineers here and there being offshore, still full-time, but being able to kind of reflect their, in a way, the countries that they reside in. And then not having a home office, working fully remote, that type of stuff, again, driving down operational costs. But yeah, so our workforce is global and it's worked really, really well for us.
So being the head of this organization, and you seem to have really leaned into the product and into raising the capital for the opportunity that presents itself, what are some challenges that you've experienced being founder and CEO that are not in the lane you want to be in? And you're like, that's not really what I want to play in. Let me find someone else to work on this for me, and how you addressed, where you might not want to spend your time and energy.
The benefit of being married is that your partner will remind you what your deficiencies are on a consistent basis.
That's the benefit, huh?
That's the So I have no problem acknowledging and seeing where my deficiencies are operationally. And I got two amazing co-founders, one that sits on the board and doesn't operate alongside us, but my other co-founder has been my partner through and through. And she is a great balance of me where I'm much more analytical, much more kind of sequential logically, right? She is a bit more dynamic, right? Sees in colors, more creative, more designy, that type of thing. And it's shown up in our product and in our product experiences and in our business, having that balance, right? And it's great because she's so good at what she does that it makes it easy for me to know what I suck at. You know what I mean? Like what I'm terrible at. So I don't brand, not marketing, I'm not creative, small C creative. I am a creative person, right? And recognizing those things and saying like, all right, we need people that are better at it. My co-founder's better at it than I am, and she leads those efforts. But there's also things that I've been great at in terms of co-founding, right, and starting the company, that as we've hired better talent and looking for people to take on more, leadership roles and operational roles in the company, where I'll see things in people. I'm like, wow, you're so much better at this than I am, right? We hired a fantastic customer success manager earlier this year. And we have a small CS team, but she came in and I'm like, wow, the way that she interacts with our customers and sees kind of around the corner for certain things, man, she's just so much better at that than I am. And I thought I was great at working with our customers and managing their needs and helping them kind of get to the benefit of, or the aha moment of our products. I mean, she's so much better at that than I am. I'm like, wow, okay, well, she's better at it than me. And I recognize that, right? And I want her to help other people on our team that are in those roles, like, elevate them, that type of thing. So like I said, I think one of the things you have to do as a entrepreneur, as a founder, is always try to find people that are better at your job or at the jobs that you do, right? The jobs that are on your kind of radar that are better than you, right? Like I shouldn't be the best person at finance on our team. I shouldn't be the best person at bookkeeping on our team. I shouldn't be the best customer success person on our team. I shouldn't be the best salesperson on our team, right? So on and so forth. I damn well better be the best visionary, right, on the team. But that's how I kind of think about it, right? Is always trying to find people that are not just better qualified, but better at the jobs that I'm doing than I am.
What revenue range are you all in right now?
We're in the single millions. So less than 10, more than $1 million.
And
I can't disclose exactly because
yeah. What is your goal for, let's say, the next 5 years in terms of growth, both customers or revenue or employee size or what have you?
5 years.
Or whatever timeline you're thinking about.
5 years seems like such a long time from now. But I'll take the challenge of 5 years. Why not? I think in 5 years, the goal would be to have true global reach, right? In terms of like what we're doing. So public policy and the work that we do is not specific to the U.S. Right? We've experimented with how do we ingest legislation from other international jurisdictions. And we have customers in different countries too, and where we've ingested policy data, but we don't really have true global reach like that. So I think in the next 5 years, like where I would be able to sit back and say, all right, we accomplished something really big would be, hey, we've got not just U.S. public policy data and U.S. public policy customers, not just Canada and Mexico, but like really true global reach, right? Where we've built a mechanism for us to be able to ingest policy data from dozens, at least, of other countries And we have customers in those dozens of other countries. And we're making an impact in those dozens of other countries because there's nonprofits and NGOs that need access to that structured policy data, particularly in emerging economies. So I think true global reach and like true global impact, right? Business and global and social impact and public benefit impact is where I would like us to be in 5 years.
And you mentioned a few times your wife playing an important role in your life. When did you get married and how has family impacted your ability to be a CEO?
It'll be 4 years in July, so almost 4 years now. We met in college, spent some time apart, like post-college, and got back together and got married in 2021. And I think most startup founders, entrepreneurs probably will say the same thing about their partner. You got to have somebody like that really supports you, supports the dream, supports the vision, but not just supports, but hopefully, ideally, this is, the relationship I have with my wife almost is like another co-founder. We don't need to co-found this business together. Like you don't have to co-found a business with your spouse for that person to de facto be your co-founder, because she's a person that, when I'm scratching my head about something, I can, ask her, right? And pick her brain. And she's more qualified than me, honestly, to run this company. She's got her MBA, she's got an MHA, she's got an entrepreneurial mindset. She's both analytical, but also very creative. So I can ask her about a lot of different things and get her feedback. And it just kind of like makes me even better at my job because I have that person as a sounding board like 24/7.
What else do you do to balance out the demands of work and not find yourself doing 20-hour days still at the office?
I'm actually I'm pretty simple. I'm like my days are very, very like ritualized, right? Like I like order. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was a military man in Nigeria. So my dad is very like regimented, right? Very disciplined. He instilled that into myself and my siblings. So I really like order. So for me, it's like I find I perform the best when I consistently know what I'm doing almost every block of a day. So my hobbies are like wake up early, go to the gym. I love fitness. I love staying healthy. Go work and then talk about work with my wife. That's basically what we do when we talk about each other's work, right, together, right, and strategize and be like, all right, what do you think about this? Like actually like, kind of almost reflect on the work day and strategize for like how we can, from whatever problems or challenges that each of us were facing. But outside of that, it's Atlanta. Like we do everything in Atlanta that you would expect to do in Atlanta. And that includes a lot of hookah on the weekends and just, enjoying, stuff at Piedmont Park and just hanging out with friends and family. So very, very straightforward. But for me, it's like there's a lot of performance for me, right? I'm about productivity and performance that comes from having my days be very regimented in that way and very focused.
So if you had to impart some knowledge on the next generation of entrepreneurs and encourage them into action, what would be the business that you would give them?
Whatever you do, it just needs to have AI in it. You can make the argument, and this is a whole different podcast episode, but you can make the argument that every white collar analytical job that exists right now in the US will be automated with AI before 2035. I think you can make a concrete case for that with the way AI is improving, the way compute costs are going down, and all associated costs when it comes to compute are going down, the investments that we're making, not just in the private sector investments, but public sector investments. So if you're coming out and you're starting a new business, I don't know. I don't have like this is the industry, this is the thing. What I do know is that AI has to be at the center of it for sure. This is not a crypto moment or a Web3 moment, this is a catalytic internet type moment, right? But what I will say is that it needs to be something that you actually care about solving. Like you have to solve a problem. It can't just be, I am building something that is, and I think it's going to be financially successful, that I'm just like interested in, or like isn't like an incremental, improvement in the status quo. Everybody right now has to think really big. So think big, dream big. Chances are getting started isn't going to be too high of a cost, won't be too high of a barrier because of AI. But think really, really big. Think big, think global. Don't just worry about solving problems in the US. Think about solving problems both in the US and in other countries. Think about solving problems that aren't so obvious, but you're seeing in your day-to-day life. But make sure that, especially if it's technology oriented, And even if it's not technology oriented, like make sure that you're thinking about what the future of what you're building looks like with artificial intelligence.
That's Damola Ogundipe, founder of Plural. If you want to learn more about Black entrepreneurs and business leaders who have made an impact, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on our YouTube channel at Give 'em the Business. Also, make sure to follow us on social media at Give 'em the Business Podcast. And if you want to send me a message, you can find me at I am Troy D. Evans. Give 'em the Business is produced by 2 Comma Media. Thanks for listening, and remember to Troy harder.